Let's meet the Yahoos. The word Yahoo has entered the English language as a noun of kind of contempt or abuse. People who are foolish or ridiculous are Yahoos. To Gulliver, the entire human species are Yahoos. In part one, and in the parts 2 and 3, the voyages we missed, Gulliver was unreliable because he's credulous, because he's stupid, naive, because he accepts everything as it's presented to him and doesn't really think it through and tends to miss the larger point. And so there's a level of irony whereby we have to supply the real interpretation of what Gulliver thinks. Gulliver's telling us how wonderful the King of Lilliput is, and we know that the King of Lilliput is like, oh, that's ridiculous. The King of Lilliput is a tiny little man. A tiny little man. Literally, but also figuratively, he's a very small person. Irony is a kind of narratological choice which leads to a kind of shared secret between the reader and the author, where you know how to read the additional meaning that Gulliver here doesn't get. The irony in book 4 is doubled. Gulliver is still a credulous boob. He's still dumb and naive, and we laugh at him for that way. But he is also a misanthrope, a person who hates humankind, who has come to hate humankind, and who is revealed progressively throughout part 4 as essentially mad. If you miss the fact he's mad, the introduction, the kind of letter to the publisher from Gulliver at the beginning, right before part 1, is all written before this. This is the Gulliver, the mad Gulliver we meet at the end of the book, is the Gulliver who's been narrating this whole book, who, if you look back at the beginning of the book, talks about, I can't deal with these Yahoos, I'm taking care of Wyndhams, and we just leave. We don't know what Yahoo or Wyndham means yet, but he's already potentially lost his mind. I want to talk about the moment he meets the Yahoos, followed by the moment he meets the Wyndhams. He, first of all, is unable to identify the Yahoos as humans. It takes him a long time, and Gulliver is never quick on the uptake. That's not how he works. In fact, part of how he works as a narrator is by being slow, so he never gets out ahead of us. Oh goodness, he never gets out ahead of us. He never gets it before we do. Sometimes he never gets it at all. He looks at them, he describes the Yahoos, these savage languages human beings, as animals. He views them as reasonless animals. They have claws, like they haven't cut their nails, they're hairier. He's describing them, he's disgusted by them. I want to point a few things. The hair of both sexes was of several colors: brown, red, black, and yellow. I'm going to stop at that sentence. The fact that they have that range of 4 hair colors makes them look like Europeans. Only the Europeans have yellow or red, really red hair. Those are very strange traits. Now, we can read the Yahoos as Gulliver meeting non-European people and being disgusted by them, but it's very important to point out the Yahoos look ethnically European. The hair color, they're described as darker, but that might just be and there are blonde and red-headed Yahoos. This is not Africa. This is not South America. These are not meant to. The European reader is not to be excluded from the Yahoos, and to Gulliver, everyone's a Yahoo. The next sentence is very important. Upon the whole, I never beheld in all my travels so disagreeable an animal, nor one against I naturally conceived so strong an antipathy. So thinking that I had seen enough, full of contempt and aversion, I got up and pursued the beaten road, hoping it might direct me to the cabin of some Indian. Let me find a person. He's looking for a non-European person to lodge with. He's using Indian as a general noun for a large class of non-European people, both in the Eastern and Western hemispheres. He doesn't view the Yahoos as human. an aversion, an instinctive antipathy. This tells us something about the Yahoos, also maybe something about Gulliver. Gulliver has learned or instinctively hates humankind. We're also learning from the Winhams that part of the nature of the Yahoo, the humans, is a dislike of their own species. That Yahoos are Yahoos because they can't get along. That humans are hostile to each other in a way Swift implies other species are not. Horses mostly get along. Human beings, not. And Swift always makes it about morality, about moral failure. I want to. He then meets the Winhams, and two things happen. Here we reverse the normal script for the colonial encounter of Europeans and non-Europeans. Gulliver with the Winhams reverses the normal tradition whereby he becomes the one who's puzzled, who doesn't understand. Both Europeans and non-Europeans were puzzled by each other, but the Europeans writing their narrative center their own experience and view their questions as scientific inquiry and the questions of other peoples they meet as superstition. Gulliver, chump that he is, first assumes that he's talking to magicians who've taken a horse shape. Bottom of 209. Upon the whole, the behavior of these animals was so orderly and rational, so acute and judicious, that I at last concluded they must needs be magicians, who had thus metamorphosed themselves upon some design, and seeing a stranger in the way, were resolved to divert themselves with him, or perhaps were really amazed at the sight of a man so very different habit, feature, and complexion from those who might probably live in so remote a climate. Upon the strength of this reasoning, I venture to address them in the following manner. Gentlemen, if you be conjurers, as I have good cause to believe, you can understand any language. Therefore, I make bold to let your worships know that I am a poor distressed Englishman, driven by his misfortunes upon your coast, and I entreat one of you to let me ride upon his back, as if he were a real horse, to some house or village, where I can be relieved, in return of which favor I will make you a present of this knife and bracelet, taking them out of my pocket. The two creatures stood silent while I spoke, seeming to listen with great attention. And when I had ended, they neighed frequently toward each other, as if they were engaged in serious conversation. I plainly observed that their language expressed the passions very well. Okay. He does the standard European thing of offering the locals minor trade goods. It's the trinkets and beads. Here's a knife and a bracelet. Hello, give me Manhattan. Right? And here the horse is looking like, what the hell is it? What is he thinking? What the hell is this person thinking? Right? And Gulliver, who's usually mocked elsewhere for being too scientifically minded, for being too mathematic and quantitative, here is rude because he's rankly superstitious. He believes he's talking to conjurers. And if you're conjurers, you understand any language because it's magic, right? Man. Then this happens. I could frequently distinguish the word Yahoo, which was repeated by each of them several times, and though it was impossible for me to conjecture what it meant, yet while the two horses were busy in conversation, I endeavored to practice this word upon my tongue. And as soon as they were silent, I boldly pronounced Yahoo in a loud voice, imitating, at the same time as near as I could, the neighing of a horse, at which they were both visibly surprised, and the grey repeated the same word twice, as if he meant to teach me the right accent. Wherein I spoke after him as well as I could, and found myself perceivably to improve every time, though very far from any degree of perfection. Then the bay tried me with the second word, much harder to pronounce, but reducing it to English orthography, it may be spelt thus: Winham. That's why you spell it. It's Winham, because they're horses. It's Mr. Ed Wilbur. I did not succeed in this so well as the former, but after 2 or 3 farther trials, I had better fortune, and they both appeared amazed at my capacity. Okay. Here, Gulliver reverses the normal European script for colonial encounters, in which he is imitating their language, where normally the Europeans do learn foreign languages. They are more interested in imposing their language on other people. Gulliver, who always kind of goes native, who always kind of enters into the worldview of the place he visits and that culture, here he begins by attempting to learn the Wynnum's language, not teach them his own. And that leads to the terms of discussion are going to be held on the Wynnum's terms in the Wynnum's language. He's going to be, Gulliver is always at a disadvantage. So I was talking about, the Wynnum's language won't say these things. It's hard to say in Wynnum because, well, but he's also at a disadvantage. He has here colonized himself. It's important to note the first word he learns is a derogatory word about himself. The Wynnum's word for human, Yahoo, is a word of contempt. Later we find that they just use it as an adjective for anything that's terrible. That's really a Yahoo house. That's a Yahoo meal. This is a Yahoo place. So human-like, it's a slur. Gulliver begins his voyage here, he begins his sojourn here with the Wynnums by speaking a slur against himself, by uttering self-hatred, and then practicing to say it better to please the Wynnums more. It's very much a servile thing. I gotta make them like me. Can I say the slur? So I'm not saying anything. I don't say these words in general, but I certainly don't say them on the internet, on camera. You pick your own ethnic slur. He's saying an ethnic slur about himself, and then he's practicing to show he's getting it right to please them, to impress them by how well he pronounces the word. And then he says humbly, I'm very far from any perfection. Oh my God. Gulliver, in this moment, colonizes and enslaves himself. He refers to the gray horse that takes him home as his master. This is a comic reversal. Okay, this is the human who's the slave of a horse. It also speaks, it's something that Gulliver actively does, and that is worth remembering.